Alright, today is November 15th. Anthony Magnabosco is around town and he's doing his Street Epistemology thing again, so let's see how it goes between me and him.
Hello.
Hey, what you up to?
I'm recording conversations for my hobby called Street Epistemology.
Oh, wait, I think I've heard of that before.
Have I interviewed you before? Have you heard about it elsewhere?
Well, I mean, I've heard it a bit elsewhere, but we haven't met.
I'm Anthony. Nice to meet you.
You too.
How are you?
Very good.
Are you all together?
Yes, sir.
Are you recording right now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in doing an interview?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You said your name was...
Yeah.
Do you want to do a joint interview? Or
Sure. If you want to do that.
do you want to do...
I think
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I think I'll handle this one.
Would you be alright
Okay.
if I was his cameraman, sir?
I beg pardon?
Would you be alright if I was his cameraman?
No, I actually have cameras going all over the place, so another camera wouldn't bother me at all. You've heard of Street Epistemology before?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about it. What do you know about it? Are you familiar with my work?
No. I have.
Okay. I won't take it personally. That's okay. What do you know about Street Epistemology?
That it's a series of questions to get someone to know more about someone else's belief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Can we just position ourselves a little bit? You're familiar with Street Epistemology and you wanted to have your belief explored with it?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I appreciate your courageousness to do that.
Yeah.
Did you also find yourself programming and learning about computer science before you decided to study it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I wanna did you start recording already? Yeah, maybe we should start just so that it doesn't run out.
Hello. How are you? Are you with these guys too? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. Computer science guy. What claim do you tend to make because you think that it's true that we can explore together?
That Jesus is God and that he rose from the dead.
Jesus is God and he rose from the dead?
Yeah.
That's two claims.
Okay.
Well, we can go with either one or we can sort of combine them, I suppose. Is one dependent on the other?
Jesus is God, yes, is dependent on Jesus rose from the dead.
He wouldn't be God if he didn't rise from the dead?
That's correct, because there has to be some sort of proof, right? That he is God.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would think that a person couldn't raise from the dead unless they were God.
Okay, so the causation is that because he is God, but in order for us to determine whether...
I see.
Yeah.
I see. The reason why you can say God is real is because you're sure he rose from the dead.
Not necessarily. That's just one of my many examples.
Okay.
Like, there's intelligent design, the cosmological argument.
I would like to talk about the reason that gives you the most confidence that it's true and would result in the greatest drop in your confidence that it's true if you discovered that it's not a good reason. If Jesus rose from the dead is the reason, if you discover that you don't have a good reason for thinking that Jesus rose from the dead, and you say, if I discovered that, I would drop the greatest,
I would more or less deconvert from Christianity.
What if you found no good reason for thinking that it was true?
That would be the same thing, I guess.
If you discover that you have no good reason for thinking that Jesus rose from the dead, it would significantly impact your confidence that Jesus was God.
Yes.
Okay. How much of a drop in confidence are we talking about?
Less than 50 for sure. Probably much less than that.
Okay.
If I discovered I had no...
30-40% or something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, that would probably be a really good reason to explore that. If it would have that much of an impact in your confidence that Jesus is God, then I think we should definitely explore how you determine that Jesus rose from the dead. Can we explore the steps that you use to get to your conclusion that Jesus rose from the dead? I assume we're talking about Jesus Christ, the Christian,
yes,
the Son of God.
Yeah, that one. The one that everyone's talking about.
Yeah, and not to be pedantic, but what does it mean to be dead?
What keeps you conscious in the real world is no longer intact.
Okay.
No.
In order for somebody to rise from the dead, would they also have to be dead?
Yes.
Okay. I'm actually seriously wondering about this. I'm honestly curious.
Sure.
Do we need to first discuss how you concluded that he was dead before we can decide?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Before we can actually explore how he rose from the dead, or
Sure. So
should we skip that step? I don't.
No,
Help me out.
it's all right. We can definitely go on to that step. So Gary Habermas lists a plethora of sources. I think he comes to around 40 to the sources of Jesus' existence, and that includes Christians, non-Christians, enemies of Christians. Yes. So it's because of that mass majority of sources, which we can talk about, that we can easily conclude that for sure he existed, he was crucified, and that he preached for the kingdom of God.
There's 40 sources that say that he existed. Do those same 40 say that he also rose from the dead?
Well,
Or are they just talking about his existence?
well, we're first establishing, correct me if I'm wrong, but that he died first, right?
I guess we can just assume that he existed, I suppose, and just focus on
Sure.
that he died, maybe just for the purpose of this. Yeah, so let's just do that. Do we need to first discuss how you concluded that he was dead before we can decide how he rose from the dead? I guess we can just assume that he existed, I suppose, and just focus on
Sure.
that he died. Do we need to first discuss how you concluded that he was dead before we can decide how he rose from the dead?
Bruh.
Sources that claim that he...
Independent sources.
Are they claims, or are they proofs? Are they evidences?
When you were born knowing nothing, right?
When I was born, did I know nothing? I mean, I guess it could be argued that maybe babies know how to breathe when they're born, or cry.
Yeah, I guess like consciously
Like,
knowing
no,
something.
I don't, again, I mean to be pedantic here, but before I agree to that, I think I need to understand what you mean by know things. Like,
I think it would be a mistake to say that I know all of health science because I'm a human being, and health science is part of me. So there definitely has to be some cognitive faculty that is engaged with that. So my point is, when you're born, you're not born with logical principles. You learn those along the way.
okay.
Yeah. So if you're born with things that you learn along the way, then that means that the way that we formulate our deductive principles is primarily through induction.
Do you have an example of a human who might be coming to knowledge through induction?
That we throw a stone and the stone goes to the floor 3 times, many times. Then we generalize and that's induction.
There's a study that says that as soon as someone were to step out of their sight, they're not conscious of the fact that they exist. In the same manner, we should approach the existence of Jesus. We use induction to come to the most probable, most reliable, most accurate conclusion.
Is that where the 40 sources come in?
Yes. If someone has 40 sources backing up their crucifixion, what they preached, and who they were, then most likely, a lot likely, he definitely was crucified and existed. I think it was, what's his name, John Dominic Crossan, head of the Jesus Seminar. I mean, a camp for liberal Christians, and mostly do not share the conservative views of Christians. And he says that Jesus' existence and crucifixion are as sure as anything in history. And it's because of this reason that any good academic institution, they will tell you Jesus for sure existed and was crucified. Yeah.
Here's what I'm wondering, though, when I hear people talk about induction and sources.
Sure.
Could it be demonstrating that that's what these people thought was true at the time, and yet may not be true in reality?
Yeah, so you need to have essentially counter sources.
Counter sources to show that it wasn't true?
Yes, you need evidence to show that he did not existed in lieu of the evidence we currently have that show that he most likely for sure existed. I'm not talking about like burden of proof or anything like that. I'm just saying that once I've established my case, now it's the opposing side's turn.
This is what I hear you saying. We have 40 sources that say people say that Jesus rose from the dead.
That, well, some of them, a good number of them say that he rose from the dead. Some of them are Christian, but Tacitus, right? He's not a Christian, but he says that a malevolent superstition broke out in Jerusalem where the first evil had been birthed or something to that extent. When he's talking about this figure called Christus, referring to Jesus, the one who was crucified under Pontius Pilate, the one who Christians were named after.
This is one of the 40 examples
Yes.
that you would say is a source.
Yes.
And here's what I'm wondering, though. It almost sounded like you were saying we can be confident in sources that say things are true if there are no other sources that say that those things aren't true.
What is your confidence that the sources are wrong?
I'm not really an expert in biblical sources.
And they're not all biblical, by the way.
There's extra biblical sources
Yeah, to corroborate.
to corroborate the claims that people made at that time. What evidence would you accept as a counterbalance to the 40 sources that are in favor
That is
of
a good question. 40 sources is a lot, like I'm telling you, it's a lot. Especially once you talk about within a few years, you can get back to Jesus.
If there were 80 sources, would we be more justified in accepting the claim?
We would be more justified, but we would still, in both scenarios, have to necessarily conclude that Jesus existed because it is more probable than all the other possibilities regarding his existence and crucifixion.
Yeah, what is increasing the probability that what you're thinking is true?
Yeah, so do you want to move on from Jesus died?
No, I'm still interested in exploring that. If we found more sources to back it up, would the probability increase?
It would increase by a bit.
It would go by a bit?
Yeah.
Is there any chance that people could have thought that something was true and were writing about it, things that we consider sources today, and it's confirming that that's what they thought, but it not really be the case?
Barely.
Yeah, so
That it's not true in reality.
So then it goes back to probabilities. Do people have hallucinations? Do people lie under these circumstances? And so you have to look at the evidence.
Are those the only two explanations?
I've watched so many debates. I've spoken to scholars myself, and the ones who don't agree with Jesus rising from the dead always say the same thing. They say, we don't know.
It almost sounded like you were saying that there are people who will come up with ways to not accept your evidence because they don't want to believe the claim.
Yeah, more or less. But my point, the drive point home is that the alternative explanations, as you were saying before, although there are a lot to choose from, none of them are really good. It's a mile wide, inch deep.
Is this your way of saying that the best reason for thinking that Jesus rose from the dead is the 40 sources?
The best way to know that Jesus rose from the dead is what Gary Habermas calls the minimal facts argument, what Mike Licona calls the historical bedrock. All scholars will agree on, regardless of whether they're Christian, atheist, agnostic, whatever belief system they have, they will agree on these things. That Jesus for sure existed and was crucified under Pontius Pilate.
Is it because of the sources? Is that why they think this?
And a lot of other things too.
This is the fundamental question.
Yeah,
Please. Yes.
His disciples, his followers, had the conviction that he rose from the dead very early on, right after his crucifixion, and that the main leaders of the apostles, and I'm speaking about Peter, Paul, he wasn't a Christian, but he converted to Christianity after having an experience with risen Jesus. James, the brother of Jesus, that one was recorded in somewhere in Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews. I think there is one more.
We don't have to go through all of them. I actually kind of like to keep it high level. When I read a story, and even if 40 people corroborate it, and let's say they've corroborated it over, I don't know how many years, whatever, I still wouldn't be willing. I might be willing to consider it, but I don't think I'd be willing to accept it as factually true. That was a good chat.
Oh, you want to end here?
I think so.
When's the next time you'll be around?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe next week, if the weather's decent.
Next week? All right.
Yeah. Thank you very much. My name's Anthony. Thank you for coming up to me and sharing your views and giving these reasons why you think that this is all true.
It isn't complete because of the time frame we had.
It can be tough to keep it low-key. Sometimes you can feel like your emotions getting in the way, but you have to kind of tap them down for the purpose of the exploration. So yeah, I meet lots of people who believe in different gods, and what's interesting is that they give a lot of the same reasons that we heard from here.
Well, we can definitely save this discussion for later. And I wouldn't agree at all that we have the same reasons because, for one thing, you could probably attest to this, but you probably don't remember someone like me coming up and saying, oh, let's record this, oh, let me explain my views, things of that nature, and was able to answer all of the questions.
You don't think I would remember somebody who answered the questions?
Or at least that it would be very rare.
Oh, no. I tend to remember many of the people I talk to, or at least the conversations. Sometimes I forget.
With the collegiate level of understanding. Not just answering just for the sake of answering.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, do you think that your responses were better than the typical responses I might get?
Absolutely.
A lot of people will comment on my videos that you need to talk to a real Christian who could defend it. And what's important is how you are coming to your conclusion. Even though he may not think that you have a really good reason or a good method, and his is superior, and by the way, you should adopt his view. And if you discover that I don't have a good reason or a good method for thinking that it's true, maybe you'll seek out better reasons. Maybe he actually has them. And it causes them to take another look at their beliefs and find better reasons for holding their views. So there's value in surfacing bad reasons and unreliable methods, because then we can at least acknowledge that we have those and we can find better reasons, like maybe your friend here has, and better methods.
It's kind of making you a better Christian when you have to question what you believe.
It can.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
That's a wrap.
Okay.